fee increases being broken out for us. This was at the request of City Council, and City Administration has helped us with this as a draft of this. So the document that is detailed for council members highlights the items that are scheduled for increase that were historically. They are highlighted in yellow in the document, and then also those that are having new fees. So I'll open this up. I will first lead in and ask if our Service Safety Director would like to give a brief overview of that and the rationale behind some of these, and I think that will help guide us in our discussion.
Sure. Thank you, President Isley, and forgive my late arrival as I was transitioning from a JV football game to Athens City Council meeting. I would much rather prefer to be here, of course. The document you see in front of you is based upon this body's request to put forward as many fee increases at once as possible with several months prior to them going into effect. And so what we attempted to do was go throughout the code and historically what we've done is different points through the year, made requests for increases in particular fees, consolidate all of those that would instead go into Title I and make that request all at once so that constituents have some time to prepare in advance of 1 January when these would go into effect. Of note, the ones that are significantly absent are trash fees, and that's specifically because we don't have a bid yet on solid waste, and so that will be something we will bring back to you after we receive bids on solid waste. So what you see in front of you is a consolidation out of Title I. Probably the ones that are most significant that everyone is interested in. Quite a few of them are from code and have to do with certain reviews for certain applications for permits. We've not increased for a number of years on those, and so we've requested minor increases in those in order to deal with staff time associated with reviewing those permits. Additionally, the sewer fee increase is included in here. Those sewer fee increases would be 4% for the base rate. That's the first 1,000 gallons that anybody pays, and then 2% increase for each additional 1,000 gallons based upon which category they're in, whether they be residential, commercial, or industrial. And then parking fee increases. The parking fee increases, what we did is we basically looked at parking demand here in the city and then looked kind of across the board at the high intensity zones, the medium intensity zones, the low intensity zones, and then the parking garage. And we recommended an increase of 25 cents per hour for each one of those. And the reason we chose that amount was simply due to a quarter. Right now we collect, you can pay by the app, obviously, but if you pay in coins, you're paying either with quarters or dimes. And as a way to avoid random amounts of change for the various increases, we just recommended a quarter increase basically in each one of those categories. So that's what I have. The increases are highlighted in yellow based on what we've recommended, and I'll take questions from there.
Okay. Yes, and so comments or questions from council members. Councilmember Swank.
Just so that the public knows what we're talking about here, basically we have 3 pages of these things. We have a lot of fees. To aid in the discussion, I'd like to throw out a proposal, suggestion, that we take this and divide it into 3 parts. Part 1 would be administrative fees. What Mr. Stone alluded to right off the bat, permitting and things like that. Administrative fees are the things that affect the fewest number of people in the city on a daily basis. And not everybody's a landlord, not everybody's improving their house. The second category would be the parking garage and the meters, the whole thing about parking. And the third topic would be the sewer. That is the category that affects the most people on a daily basis. We all have water in our house, and we pay for the water coming in, and we pay for the sewer going out. Rather than bunching these all into one ordinance, I actually mentioned this to the mayor yesterday when he was kind enough to be visiting our neighborhood. I just think it would make more sense to do it that way. I have more comments, but I just throw that out for consideration and for ease of discussion today.
Comments from other council members? Councilmember Spelness.
I was going to go to a new topic, so if somebody wants to.
We can, yes.
Or if you
If
wanna
there's no
cons-
response in response to the yes.
I do
Service
respond,
Safety Director
President
Stone.
Isley.
Yes.
The reason these are all bunched together, President Isley, is because City Council asked for them to all come at the same time. So this is certainly is no intent of the administration to go and put them all together. It's because council asked specifically for us to consider them all at once, and so that's why we're doing it.
I do remember historically, we were faced with a number of increases, and we began to think about all of them together earlier in the year. Yeah. Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. Correct me if I'm wrong, Member Swank. I think Member Swank is suggesting that we do all this at once,
Yes, sir.
but that we separate into those categories by ordinance. Now, having said that, which I believe is what he's saying, I'm not sure I understand exactly how that's going to help. If individual community members are out in their homes and are following our ordinances, seeing an ordinance on sewer and water versus an ordinance that has, additional things in it, I don't know if they can't see the sewer and water in one place rather than in two different places. Anyway, that, Director Stone, I think that's what Mr. Swank was saying.
As you wish.
All right, before we move on to Councilmember Spielness's comments, which I think are slightly different, is there any other comment on the consideration of 3 ordinances all considered at the same time rather than one ordinance? And so I would also want us to check with the law director on that, too. Yeah. Councilmember Swank.
In response to Member Crowell's comments, and you're absolutely right, that's what I was proposing. By lumping these all together, it's kind of like the bills we sometimes see in the State House and in the national government, where everything but the kitchen sink gets thrown into a bill. Because there are more good things in that bill than bad things, that bill often gets passed with some bad things in it. Some very bad things in it. And if this comes across as one ordinance, I would have a very difficult time voting for it because of some of the things, some of the fee increases that we're talking about here. Now, I don't know if we want to get into those specifics yet, but that's an analogy that I would draw. That some of the things that the State House has passed, like an education bill, they put in there a possibility of free lunch for every student, free breakfast for every student in the state of Ohio, which I think would be a great thing. Can't eat, can't learn. But in that same bill, they throw in there that you can't have diversity training. That's a bad thing, combined with a good thing. Now, does the good outweigh the bad? That's a decision we'd have to make. Yeah. And I think there's some problems in these fee increases that may outweigh the good, and therefore I would have a difficult time voting for this as is.
I hear what you're saying. I'd also know that the fee increases is a fairly specific topic. I understand what you're saying, that there are differences between administrative parking and sewer in your mind, but I think they're all fairly specific and point to the operations of a city and what we need to be able to break even on them. Councilmember Graves.
Yes. I was going to say that I feel that that is a false comparison, as these are all fee increases, all intended to be contained within the same section of our city code. And I would also say that to me, it doesn't really make much difference if we're discussing one ordinance and then the next ordinance and the next ordinance, all 3 in a row. We could just as easily discuss one topic followed by the next topic, followed by the next topic, though it's all in one ordinance. And we as members of council all have the power to offer amendments to an ordinance that could change any specific parts to the ordinance, and then those amendments could be voted up or down. It's not as though we have to accept or reject the entire ordinance as it is initially introduced.
Councilmember Crowell.
Sorry, one last question.
Okay.
When I sat down, I had a piece of paper, and
And
I'm not sure where this
that's now
came
going to
from.
be explained by Councilmember Spielness.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I asked her to make copies for everybody
Okay.
so you could see it in writing.
Yes, I wanted to make
Your
sure
concerns.
put in the minutes as well. So, yeah, I actually appreciate what Member Swank is suggesting. I think that it helps people to kind of understand the differences, and in going through this, it is a little bit challenging to go, oh, what is this really part of? So I appreciate what he's saying. I'm not going to fight for it, though. So anyway, moving on to my concerns. And I want to go through and look at the differences specifically regarding reinspection kinds of things and things that involve when someone has an offense of some sort, okay? So I start off with garbage, rubbish, offense rates. So if you leave your trash around, and some of these things are a little bit hard to grasp really, first offense is $50, fifth offense is $150. Citation for sanitation violations and solid waste violations. First offense is $50, fifth offense is $150. I don't know if that's good or bad, to be honest, but that's not my point. My point is that for the most part, I'm guessing, and I guess this is a question for the administration, who are the people who get fined for this? Are these individual homeowners? Are we talking about landlords or businesses or all of the above? You know, who does this really apply to?
Are you talking about the violations, the sanitation violations for litter and mess? Is that one of your specific ones?
Well, the first few.
And-
So garbage and rubbish, and then citations for sanitation violations and
Right.
solid waste.
And-
So who gets
I mean, I
gets
could be
these?
wrong, but I think the second entry, the citations for sanitation violation historically, those were increased because the solid waste control officers were finding that when they went, and these are predominantly student rentals, as I'm recalling the discussion, and there was no response or a flip, we don't care if there's another $50 fine.
Okay,
So when
makes
it
sense.
escalated to
Yep.
50 and said, and be able to inform them, by the way, next time, it's going to be 75, and then the next time. And so I think that over the last few years, there's the response to the solid waste citations has been better, and it's made enforcement more reasonable. Yes, Councilmember Grace, and then Mayor Patterson.
I would just, first of all, want to clarify that these are not rates that are recommended for change in this,
And-
from the administration. So I want to be clear that we're talking about rates that the administration has not proposed a change to these fees, but also that when a citation is issued, the garbage/rubbish citations, they're usually left at the door of the residence where the offense is noted. And in my experience of talking with people and observing our city employees, warnings are issued first, and conversations are attempted with the residents to determine if this is just a rare oversight. And I have, in fact, seen our city employee out assisting in picking up trash outside a home following a party. But then if there are ongoing offenses that are not cleaned up, usually a citation is attached to the door of the residence.
And Mayor Patterson, you had a comment?
I'm going to cede my
about it?
time to
Oh, okay.
Councilmember
And-
Spielness, because she.
Okay, and I believe, Councilmember Spielness, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but as you explained this to me briefly before handing it out, what you're doing is you're citing these existing fines because you're wanting to make a case for some others on the reverse side about which you have questions. Is that
Yes.
correct?
So.
Okay, so maybe.
I appreciate what you said,
with
Member
that.
Grace. I appreciate that this, and my point is not that these are changing, of course they're not. My point is that this is how we handle it when there's an offense. We build up so that there's an increasing penalty, right? Okay, so I'm just establishing a pattern here that I think is important. Okay, so then with water rates, just a delinquency turn-on penalty is $40, non-sufficient fund charge is $33, after-hours turn-off fee is $50. I'm guessing for those kinds of fees, it's people that are pretty low income, right? So this is a pretty hefty fee, right? I would think. I yield to the mayor for a moment.
Thank you. No, I mean, it's not necessarily for low-income people. Our utility billing office sees individuals who have the wherewithal to pay, but just for whatever reason is not paying it. And so, no, this isn't singling out any income level for anybody. And I will point out, the after-hours turn-off requires then on overtime for an individual to be coming back in to turn that off. So there's a significant cost on the city side for that individual to have to respond, which in my opinion, the $50 turn-off fee for after-hours is much lower than what it costs the city for that individual to go.
And thank you. That does make sense, and I appreciate it. And it's still, I'm trying to build a case here. Okay, so for fire inspection safety, and it was nice enough to Chief Reimer to give me a little bit of insight into this, but for the first reinspection fee, it's $0. And based on my conversation with Chief Reimer, that made sense. They want to make sure that there is sort of a warning system, and let's get them to get it right. However, what my concern is for the second reinspection fee is only $25, but that's true for both under 10,000 square feet as well as over 10,000 square feet of building. Now, anybody can figure out that over 10,000 square feet is going to be more labor intensive and take more time. So therefore, it seems justified to add an additional fee, and I'm just suggesting one, but also perhaps increasing that. I think it's worth a discussion, increasing these fees so that they are worth the time for the city to go out and do it. We are understaffed in our fire station, and I would like to do more to provide some fees that will help them do their job, especially as we are growing. As you know, I live in University Estates, and right across the road from us, we have these big apartment complex, a new large apartment complex, and we could really use a building inspector who could check for the kinds of things that could be a disastrous fire. Now, this wouldn't cover all the costs, but I think it's something to talk about to build a case for increasing the fees. And I don't think that's unreasonable. Moving on to the next page, or your other side of the page. So each subsequent reinspection fee after the third increases by 50. I think it ought to be more, and I think that for larger buildings, it ought to be much more. If they've gotten to that point, they don't care, clearly, and it needs to hurt a little bit. As you said earlier, we get more of a response when we start to increase the fee. So I think it's worth that discussion, especially given how much it costs to send a person out to do this. I have more, but I will yield to the mayor.
Yes, Mayor Patterson.
So Councilmember Spielness, I do not disagree with you in terms of the escalation when I know that our firefighters who have a lot of important work to do on a daily basis to have to reapproach the same business over and over and over again, because maybe they didn't put the panic bar on that back door, or maybe there was boxes piled up by an exit point, which Chief Reimer has briefed me on when I was the doorman at Tony's. I used to see what can happen excuse me, in some of these businesses. But what I'm hearing from you is maybe restructuring the language somewhat to where it's not a fee. A fee sounds like a nice thing to pay, whereas a fine is something that is impacting you, to where now you are continually becoming for lack of a better term, a repeat offender on whatever it is that is causing our fire department to have to go back and re-inspect and re-inspect and re-inspect, then it just becomes an escalating fine.
I am fine
That's
with that.
semantics, and I get it, but, you know, a fee means one thing to me.
Yes,
A fine, you have to pay that.
right. So that, to me, is really a separate issue, fee and fine. But I have more, but I will yield.
Yes, Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. So I see that we have Chief Reimer in the audience, but maybe members, to be honest, you know the answer to this question. So if I understand correctly, and I'm catching up here, there is an annual fire inspection. And if a violation is noted, that's when they have to be re-inspected. So your point being is that if they have to keep coming back and back and back, this ought to add up more than it does. My question is at the state level or at the municipal level, isn't there a point where you can't just, you get shut down? Or is it the level of the violation that matters? If you keep coming back and there's no bar on the back door, doesn't that business, isn't there, I mean, does it even go past 3? I mean, what is the ultimate penalty when this becomes a safety violation?
He'll explain it.
Chief Reimer, thank you. Good you're here.
So am I. It all depends. Now, with the State Fire Marshal's Office, there is inside the Ohio Fire Code, they do have the ability to fine up to $1,000 a day for noncompliance. Now, they do give a certain amount. So the State Fire Marshal's Office initial fee for doing an inspection as they do with OU is $200. And then the repeat, I'd have to look and see what their schedule is as far as increasing that, whether it's $200 for the reinspection, $250, whatever the case may be. But they do have a certain provision within the Ohio Fire Code that allows the State Fire Marshal's Office to penalize up to $1,000 a day. If they're still not within compliance, then they would have to go through the legal system, the same as you would do here, in order to prove that it's, I won't say it's a nuisance, but they are not complying with it. And what we usually do on our end is if they have not shown any progress towards fixing the issues that we have brought up to them, we have a little bit of a leniency to it. But if they haven't shown any progress and they just keep snuffing in our face as we keep going back and said, you still haven't taken the panic bar or put a panic bar in that back exit, and said, yeah, we're not going to do it, well, then we just end up taking it about, usually it's the third or fourth offense, we take it to and direct it to the city prosecutor's office. And then they will send a letter out saying, you must comply to this, or this is what's going to happen.
But that never elevates to the state fire? They don't ever come in and say, okay, we're going to shut you down
There are
$1,000 a day?
times- there are
That sounds like
times
they'd start to listen.
Yeah. There are times we just say, you know, we're turning over to the State Fire Marshal's Office. You're not going to listen to us. They have more teeth. They can come in and say, we're taking this inspection over and we're going to give you $1,000 a day fine because they have it within their code. We would have to adopt something or more progressive fees or fines. As the mayor is saying, a fine or is it a fee? Do we say, yes, we're going to adopt this section of it and say, if you're not complying with by the third or fourth offense, then it's going to be $1,000 a day for everything, or we're going to shut your business down. If it's an immediate life safety issue, we will suggest shutting the business down. Then that's gas leaks, something of that nature. Storing gasoline or flammable products inside of a grocery store, something that they're not supposed to be doing. All right, we're shutting you down immediately until you get this stuff out of here, correct the problem immediately. We cannot wait 30 days for you to fix this issue. So we take care of it that way. But as the way our process goes, it's more of a fee schedule of, we're doing $25 for the reinspection. That's on the second return. So on the first one, what we're trying to do is we are trying to encourage people to say, hey, hurry up and get this fixed. If you get this fixed, you're making progress on it. You're showing us, I can't get this exit sign replaced because I can't find an electrician that wants to come in here and take care of that type of deal. They're making an effort to alleviate and fix those issues as not an immediate life safety issue. Then, you know, that first reinspection is like, great, thank you for doing the job. We're just back here as a courtesy, make sure it's taken care of. We're not going to be back for a while, maybe another year type deal. If we have to keep going back, that's when it should increase to say, all right, it's really getting to be, I won't say a nuisance, but a problem that you are not taking care of this issue.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks. Okay, Councilmember Spielness.
Thank you. And thank you, Chief Reimer. I really appreciate that. The point being here is that if, I'd rather have us get some of those funds before we have to go to the state. You know, so let's hit them where it hurts just a little bit. I mean, in my conversation with Chief Reimer, I'm all about let's encourage them to do the right thing. If they've got a problem, they can't get an electrician, sure, give them a break. But if that's not happening, let's hit them where it hurts so they get it done. This is life and death stuff. Remember College Hill? That was a disaster. That's a whole other conversation. But in any case, we don't want that to happen again. We're getting more, you know, the apartments nearby me that I want to make sure stay safe and whatnot. And, you know, Chief Reimer personally goes out and does a lot of these inspections himself. We need some more staff. Let's get some more funding. Let's hit them where it hurts. Okay, moving on. All right, so then I'm a little concerned about rental permit fees. Okay, so, and I need some clarity about this. With the rental permit fee for $40 per bedroom per rooming house, what is a rooming house? What does that even mean? Or short-term, what does that mean?
Service Safety Director Stone can answer that.
So rooming house is like a fraternity or sorority.
Okay, if that's the case, then my concern is, it says rental permit fees $75 per unit for more than 10 units in one building, but $150 per unit up to 10 units in one building. So that brings up another issue. As you know, a lot of these newer complexes, for students in particular, have 4-bedroom apartments, and they charge each room the equivalent of an apartment, essentially. Are we getting the revenue for that? Because that seems like they're trying to get out of paying the fees.
Question towards me.
Councilmember Grace?
I would just say if it's a single apartment, then the inspection, what needs to be inspected doesn't change dramatically. So if you have 4 bedrooms, but you still just have one kitchen, one common living area in terms of the inspection, I would say that a per unit fee makes sense, if I'm understanding your question correctly.
Yes, but it seems to me that if there's 4 bedrooms, wouldn't that be more to look at? If they're charging for, if we're charging, actually, it's not about inspections at this point. This is just a rental permit fee we're talking about. What I'm talking about is if they are getting 4 bedrooms and charge for each of those bedrooms, then they should be charged more than if it's a 4-bedroom for one family.
So whether it's individual leases per bedroom versus,
Yes. Why shouldn't we get some extra revenue for that?
So you're asking for a clarification?
Yes.
The code director is not here. I don't know if you want to address that, or we can, some of these things we're going to bring up for discussion tonight. We're going to return it to administration. There'll probably be additional discussion. So we're not going to solve all this tonight.
Right.
But
But
I hear you mentioning the
this-
point. And Mayor Patterson, you had a comment?
I would just like Director Stone to give a very brief
Sure.
response.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, President Isley. So permit fees are supposed to be associated with roughly the cost incurred by city staff to regulate that activity. So to Member Speldis' point, it probably does take slightly more time to inspect a 4-bedroom apartment than it does to inspect a 1-bedroom apartment. Historically, we've not drawn a distinction because you know, it's kind of in the wash. We have been specific in drawing a distinction between, you know, significant multi-unit buildings versus like an individual house, say, for instance, that you would go to with $150 per unit, say, for that individual house versus the $75 per unit for, say, you know, an apartment complex that has 40 units. And that has to do with time associated with arranging for access. You know, often the inspections with those large units, large multi-unit locations You coordinate with a site manager who subsequently lets you into room or to unit after unit after unit after unit after unit. And so, when you aggregate that out, the costs associated with going there and making those inspections are lower, and that's why there's a distinction there. As far as a distinction between a 4-bedroom apartment versus a 1-bedroom apartment, we've never made that. If it's something this body would like to do, certainly, I mean, we can do our best to try to figure out what the difference would be in order to allocate costs differently.
If I may, just
Yeah,
really quick,
Patterson.
I think something that council really needs to hear is, again, in a multi-unit apartment complex, like the Inn at Coates Run, which has 1,000 units, or well, X number of units, a lot. Again, it doesn't distinguish between a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom. The inspector goes in and looks at all of them all the same under this current fee structure.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Spielness.
Yes, and what I would say is, I don't think that that's right, because I'm guessing that each of those individuals that have separate bedrooms have to allow somebody to come in and look at their individual bedroom. And if there's a lawsuit, because I've spoken with the law director about this, if there's, and other people, that if one person does not pay their rent and disappears, all those other people are liable. It's not like you're dealing with one family. You're dealing with 4 or 3 or whatever individuals that can have individual legal issues and individual other problems with their apartments. So to me, it is different. Now, I don't think that they should be necessarily paid by unit exactly as we would for a whole apartment, but I think that needs to be taken into consideration as we consider fees for rentals.
So I hear you are making the distinction that you would like code office to look at those distinctions.
Exactly.
And
And
perhaps
I-
consider a more complex fee structure depending on the number of
Exactly.
units, number of bedrooms.
And I
Okay.
think I need to say here that Member Grace is a landlord. So as far as I'm concerned, she does not have a voice in this conversation. Thank you. And may I continue? So, all right, so there's that. And then there's the rental inspection fees in addition. So, under our fees, we have one fee. If they don't comply, if the apartment is not kept up and they fail their inspection, there is a $40 reinspection charge. $40, that's it. No matter how many times, no matter if it goes on for a year, $40 for each one. $40. All these other things, $50 for the first offense, $150 for the 5th offense, $40 if the inspection is not complied with. Now, that just does not seem right. I mean, really, come on. That's just not right. That needs to change. And I know that not every community has this kind of thing, but we have some issues in this community. We have some pretty lousy apartments. We have wonderful landlords, like Member Grace, thank you very much. And we have some other terrific landlords who are very fair and really do a good job. We also, as we all know, as with anything else, we have a few landlords who are not. And they do get away with not being inspected and passing their inspections more than once. I think that ought to hurt them. I think we should be really fair. In fact, I would argue that for landlords who are consistently passing their inspections, they should get a break. I mean, don't let them, give them a 3-year license or whatever, so they don't have to pay. But for those people who have really bad records, make it hurt, because $40 is nothing. So I am arguing strongly for a much more robust effort to rein in some of the bad landlords that we know exist in our community. So I know that one community I spoke to said that although 90% of their code enforcement cases are resolved by the property owner, when voluntary compliance is not obtained, however, the city pursues criminal charges. Now, I talked to them and they said criminal charges doesn't really work that well, but civil, so they're trying to move over to civil. But I think we need to be much more robust, and I think it's absolutely shameful that we have the system that we do now.
Comments duly noted. Do we have any additional comments from council members? We're going to work to bring this to a close for our initial discussion on this. So a couple more comments from council members and opportunity for administration to respond. Councilmember Grace, then Councilmember Swank, followed by Mayor Patterson.
I would just clarify that though I am a landlord in my time on council, each time there has been a proposal to increase fees on landlords, I have voted in favor of that. And I have spoken with people about whether or not these issues are a conflict of interest. But I wanted to clarify that I think it's important that we keep in mind the difference between a permit fee and, much like in the case of the fire inspections, and a fine or a penalty that is being assessed for noncompliance. And so in terms of the rental permit fee and Member Spielness's points about a unit that has perhaps 4 occupants on 4 separate leases, they do not all have to give permission for their room to be inspected. That's if in a large complex where these types of units would exist, the landlord would provide a blanket notice to all residents that inspections will be taking place at a set time. And I know that I, as a landlord, even I don't own any large complexes, but if I have a home that has multiple residents, I notify them in advance, at least 24 hours in advance, that an inspection will be taking place and that I will be there with the code inspector and that they may be present or don't have to be. And then the landlords have keys, and when we've given notice, then the inspection happens. The resident doesn't have to be there. They don't have to say, yes, it's okay for code enforcement to come conduct this inspection. So I just wanted to clarify that a renter cannot refuse to allow, when properly notified, for code inspection to come do their inspection. And so those will happen in, as the mayor was saying, in a large complex. You've got someone there with a key, and they can go very quickly from unit to unit and do those inspections. And I do think that looking specifically at chronic issues that are not being resolved, not being addressed, not coming into compliance, we do have mechanisms in our city code for those to be referred to the law director, and I would not argue against those being heightened or enforced more regularly. But I think we want to keep in mind that the permit fee, as our service safety director said, the fees, inspection fees and permit fees are designed to cover the cost to the city, not to be assessed based on how much income or revenue a landlord or a vendor is receiving from holding that permit. But it is what the cost is to the city to conduct that service. And so I think we should keep those separate.
Okay. We're going to close with Councilmember Swank and then Mayor Patterson.
I do have a rebuttal on that, though.
Okay, 30 seconds. I really think we need to bring this to a close. We're approaching 45 minutes.
Okay.
Do you want to do a 30-second rebuttal?
And I agree with member that's correct. However, I know I've talked to the law director about the fact that one of the biggest expenses she has is trying to deal with, and she'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, that one of the biggest deals she has to deal with is when there are multiple people in one apartment, that if somebody bails out, it creates a big problem because the other people feel that they don't have to pay, and then there's all kinds of legal stuff. So it affects the legal side of it, not just code enforcement.
So as we revisit this, and the administration it will also, the law director always watches our meetings. She will be following up, and we can do it in a collaborative way to work with the
Thank you for your
administration.
patience.
Okay, Councilmember Swank, then Mayor Patterson.
Okay, so far we've talked about topic 1 of the 3 I suggested, and that's the administrative fees. I'd like to now turn attention to the other 2, parking and sewer. In terms of the parking, we are about to, in the parking garage, move to a brand-new way of paying, and that's a kiosk system, where someone drives in, I assume gets a ticket, and when they leave, put the ticket in and they pay. Correct me if I'm wrong, Director Stone, but that will be a 24-hour-a-day, except on holidays and Sundays, system.
Thank you, Member Swank. It's the same as it is right now.
Yeah.
24 hours a day.
The difference is, though, we will now be charging and enforcing charging for people who park in the parking garage 24 hours a day. Unless I'm wrong, I don't think we're ticketing people at 1 in the morning, or at 11 at night, or 7 at night now.
Sure, thank you, Member Swank. We have.
We have or we are?
We have. It's I'm hesitant to say on television what times the parking enforcement officers patrol the garage. I don't know that I want to divulge that information. However, both our parking enforcement officers as well as our police department has the ability to ticket inside the
Yeah.
garage.
And I
from time to
understand,
time we do.
and I understand that, and the young people in the town know it too. My point in all this is, when we go to an automated system, we are going to be able to increase the revenue that we derive from the parking garage, because it's going to be staffed 24 hours a day. It will be. My suggestion is this: when it comes to the parking rates, let's wait, get the system installed, and see what the revenue difference is in the first 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year. At the current time, we have over $300,000 in unencumbered balance in 730 and 733, the parking garage fund and the parking garage debt fund. We may or may not need additional money, but the fact that we're going to be able to generate more revenue because of this new kiosk system, I think kind of warrants a wait and see attitude. That's parking. Sewer rates, and this would probably necessitate the no vote. 2019, on 9/1 of 2018, we increased sewer rates 67.52%. 67.52%. I'm reading off the document that was provided us in the package. Now, the rationale for that was we had gone a long time and not increased our sewer rates. In fact, the 8 years was thrown out there, 10 years was thrown out there. So I'll buy the 10 years, which would take us back to 2008. Between 2008 and 2018, the average rate of inflation in the United States of America was 1.56%, or a cumulative total over that 10-year period of 16.69%. 16.69%. Yet we proceeded to raise the sewer rates on the citizens of Athens 67%. We then followed that up in 2020 with another 7% increase. 2021, another 6% increase. 2022, another 3% increase. 2023, another 3% increase. And now for 2024, another 4% proposed increase. In other words, from 2018 to 2024, a 6-year period, our sewer rates have gone up double plus another 12%. Double plus another 12%. While in that period of time, the cumulative rate of inflation, including our most recent round of record inflation, is only 18.96%. You know, what I found interesting is when I got the agenda says, Committee of the Whole, 2024 fee increases. That's one hell of an assumption. It should have just said 2024 fee discussion or fee conversation, because what that implies is we're going to raise your rates. What about cost containment? Nowhere in any of this documentation is there any cost containment.
Councilmember Swank, I am going to clarify.
I get 10 minutes.
I do want to clarify, we asked the city to come up with increases that we thought that they needed.
I can understand that.
So this is a proposal, this is up for discussion. It does not mean that it's going to necessarily be increased.
And that's why in
So I don't-
committee, I am making
And I
my
don't think
point.
you should portray it, that this is a done deal. And I think it does a disservice to the city administration for the work that they've done when we asked them to do it. And we asked them to do it ahead of time so we could have discussion.
And that's
You
what
will
we're
get-
having, is a
and you will-
discussion.
You will have your time, but you don't need to inflate what's happened.
I
or what
haven't,
we've requested.
these are accurate figures provided to us.
I'm not talking about the figures, I'm talking about the tone and the increase.
Well, you know
So
what?
can-
You know
can-
what? Nowhere in our rules and regulations does it say anything about tone. It does say respect for individuals, and I have extended that respect to everybody up here. My tone is what the citizens of Athens have elected us to do, and that is to be custodians of their money. We've already thrown away $250,000 this year that we didn't need to throw away on a useless, needless trash contract. And now we're asking people to pay another 4% when the rate of inflation has not even come close to that. There's only one other institution in America that gets away with this, and that's higher education. The difference is we get voted on and elected. And I feel a responsibility of the citizens of Athens to make this point very clear, and if it requires a raised voice and an emotional tone, so be it. I will continue to show respect for you and the rest of the members here and those in the audience. But I cannot, with a clear conscience, vote yay on something that takes money out of people's pockets who are already hurting.
So noted. Do we have any comments from other council members? Councilmember Grace.
Just two things, and I would just say that if we look at previous agendas, for instance, a prior agenda, an item on the agenda stated disposal of police department firearms and ammunition. It did not say or convey to anyone that that was already decided and that there was not going to be any discussion. It's just put on the agenda as that is the topic. So I just feel that as far as agenda topics, saying fee increases, that is the topic of discussion, is fee increases. So I think that it is not saying this is already decided and voted on or done.
I think you missed my point.
But the second item is I would like to ask if the city administration, to the best of their ability, could provide us with a list of sewer system improvements that have been done since perhaps 2010. So if we had that large increase in 18 and there had not been one for somewhere 8 to 10 years prior, then I think we need to be talking about this. The total increase goes back to whenever that prior increase was, somewhere 2008, 2010, but then look at, this is not simply the cost for maintaining an existing system, but what improvements have been made to the system in terms of efficiency that allowed us to have savings in other areas and to be a more environmentally sustainable process. And I think that that is something that is relevant to the discussion of the fees.
Other comments? All right. If not, yes, Mayor Patterson. Yes.
I was the third person, wasn't I?
You
I
were,
almost forgot
you
what I was
were
going to say.
in your comments, yes.
Yes, we can provide that list to you quite easily. I was on city council when we had the $20 million plus renovation to the wastewater treatment plant. And at that point in time, looking at our debt schedule and the percentage increases over a 16 plus period of time. So we can get that for you. That's not an issue. I just want to return to something that Councilmember Spalness was talking about for rental units or landlords where, they are doing a great job with the inspections and doing something to where there's, say, 0 violations or minimal violations. It's something I thought about in 2016, and though I did speak with several landlords about maybe we look at a 3-year period of time to where, that we could potentially change that fee structure somehow, or even maybe they're doing such a great job, do they need to be inspected annually? And the interesting question I got is that the landlords were saying, I want to be inspected because without inspections, I might miss something and therefore I'm liable for something that could go wrong in that rupture. So I appreciate your comment. I just want you to know that because I was thinking it too 8 years ago. But I learned a lot from the landlords who said, this is invaluable to us to have this level of inspection and to not skip a year or whatever. It gives them comfort to know that it's been inspected and that they're in good shape.
Good point.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, Council Member Ziff, yes, and then we'll move on.
Thank you, President. This will only take about 45 minutes, don't worry. You know me, I'm a big fan of trying to bring levity when possible, and while we're talking about code stuff, I just wanted to, this feels like an appropriate moment to give a little shout out. I'm a renter. My apartment was just recently inspected a couple of days ago by the Athens Code Office. I believe his name was Matt. I just wanted to say how much I appreciated everything he did. He was excellent. He came in, he was looking at paint, he was making sure everything was right. He found every little thing that needed to get fixed, and as a renter, that made me feel really safe and secure. So, thank you to our code office. There's a little brief moment of levity from Ben. There you go.
Thank you. Well, it's insight we wouldn't necessarily get, so thank you. All right, we'll move on to Finance and Personnel Committee, and this is chaired by Councilmember Crowell and joined by Councilmembers Reisner, Ziff, and Spieldis. Oh, and if you would like to, just before we start, Councilmember Grace had a good suggestion. You could stay, Councilmember McCara, so you can see easily the screen for the presentation that we have, courtesy of our library director.
Thank you, President Isley. First on our agenda tonight is the Athens County Library and the Imagination Library program, which I think we are all aware, and a presentation by Executive Director Nick Tepe. Thank you for being here, Mr. Tepe.
Thank you, Member Crowell. Waiting for the presentation to come up.
There we go.
There you go. Thank you again for having me here. I'm Nick Tepe, Director of Athens County Public Libraries, and I'm here today to talk to you about what I hope we all will agree is an investment that was well spent, the Dolly Parton Imagination Library of Ohio here in Athens County. This is a recap of what I presented to you last year. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly just as a reminder. Dolly Parton's Imagination Library was started in 1995. Dolly is a big believer in literacy. Her father was not able to read, and she was determined that that not happen to anybody else if she could help it. So she started out in her home county, Sevier, Tennessee, making sure that every child in that county got a book every single month from birth to age 5. And it was such a big hit there in Tennessee, it gradually spread. It is now worldwide. The benefit to this program is that Dolly's organization takes care of selecting the books, takes care of getting the books printed, takes care of shipping the books, takes care of the database. The only thing that we have to do is get people signed up and pay $2.10 per child per month for the books, which, trust me, I can tell you as somebody who has to purchase a lot of books, that is bargain basement prices. And these are really high quality books. Piper was signed up for this program until she was age 5, and we still have a number of those books are some of her favorites. So the way that this got started here in Athens County, it's been operating in Ohio for a while, but back in, actually it was when Governor DeWine first took office. And I should mention, we have here Debbie Cantor, who's the Southeast Ohio Regional Director for Dolly Parton's Imagination Library of Ohio. But Governor DeWine was determined to get the Imagination Library into every single county in the state. He and Fran were instrumental in getting the Imagination Library set up in Greene County, where my friend Carl Colon is the library director, and he's been involved with that program for a long time with the DeWines. But starting with the 2019 to 21 state budget, any county in Ohio that joined the Imagination Library, the state would pick up half of the costs, and they still are picking up half of those costs. So we started operations in January 2020 with the Athens County Foundation as our 501c3 partner. So they're the ones who actually hold the fund, and Athens County Public Libraries are the official local affiliate, so we're the ones who take care of all of the administration. Over the last 3-ish years now, we have received donations direct from the Athens County Foundation, from Ohio Health, which pledged $2,500 per year for the first 5 years. The libraries also contribute to the fund. excuse me, Athens Rotary Foundation has contributed, the Child Conservation League has contributed, Athens City Schools has contributed, and also the Athens County Foundation does a good job of hitting up their donors to support the fund as well. So what has that yielded? When I came to talk to you last year, we had 1,443 kids in Athens County signed up. We are now up to about 1,700 children currently enrolled. That's out of an estimated 2,600 or so eligible children in the county. That TEP, total eligible population, that is an estimate based on the census. And so it does fluctuate a little bit from year to year, but it is basically, excuse me, their best guess for how many kids there are in all of these various different areas. I've been convinced for a while that they are massively overestimating the number of kids in Ames and Byrne Township, because that is consistently pretty low there, but everything else, especially when you look at it in aggregate, is pretty accurate. So in 2022, that means that we mailed out 18,324 books across Athens County. Those are books that are going into households. Each book arrives with the child's name on it. These books are being treasured by these families, and more importantly, living in Southeast Ohio, we are in a book desert down here. Any books, especially kids' books, coming into our community is going to be a benefit. The total cost of that was $38,352.08 in 2022. Half of that, of course, was picked up by the Dolly Parton's Imagination Library of Ohio. I keep wanting to say the Ohio Governor's Imagination Library. They changed their name this year. In addition to that, they actually gave us, every affiliate in the state, they gave 2 months free in 2022 as well. So the total that was paid by local donations in 2022 was $13,145.34. And thus far in 2023, we have received about $6,000 worth of donations. So we're about halfway there, which brings us to the ask. So there are currently 635 children enrolled in the 45701 zip code. That is up from 516 in 2022. And the kids graduate when they hit age 5. Their last book they get is Kindergarten, Here I Come. So this number is going up despite the fact that we have kids rotating off on a regular basis. Going through those addresses showed 336 Athens City addresses currently enrolled. That's up from 240 in 2022. And that means a cost of about $700 per month for Athens City children in order to maintain that program. In 2022, very generously, Athens City gave us $6,000 to support the Imagination Library Fund at the Athens County Foundation, and we would love for you to renew that $6,000 this year. The total cost for Athens City children in 2023, though, will be $8,400 approximately. So if council would be gracious enough to increase the amount that you're giving towards the program, we would be greatly appreciative. And with that, I would gladly take any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Tepe. Any questions from the committee? Yes, Member Grace.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Mr. Tepe. I would, just for clarity, and I may have missed it, the $8,400, is that the total cost before the state, or the cost after the state pays for half?
That is the cost of all of those kids. So it's before the state. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other committee members?
Does the totals also include postage?
Yes.
Do you get a break from the post office?
Yes. Quite a break.
I thought so.
That's the advantage of working with the larger organization, because they are mailing those things out in bulk nationwide. So yeah, that we could never do this locally.
Okay.
Member Spielness, any comments?
Oh, I think it's a great program, so thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Yes, I will echo Member Spielness's comments. Great program. I believe we funded this out of the general fund. Okay. Other members of council, any comments for Mr. Tepe? Yes, Mr. Schwank.
As I said last year, I thoroughly believe in this program. I have 2 grandchildren to get the books. I forgot to bring them today. The ones that just came are very, very colorful on the cover. We're talking a whopping $25 a kid for the kids in Athens. That's it. You came before us last year, and I may have asked this last year, and I don't think it went very far, but I would ask it again. Would council consider, rather than asking Mr. Tepe each year to come and ask for this, to do this over a 3-year period? I don't think any of our opinions are going to change between now and next year in terms of the value of this program, and it would streamline the process. But I throw that for your consideration.
Yes, Member Ziff.
Thank you, Member Crowell. My only concern with that would be, would there be the potential of cost increases though? Because we're seeing the previous one was 6 and this one's 8,400. And then if would that lock us into oh, and this year we actually will be better if we got an additional 400, but we're like, oh, too bad. We agreed on 84 for 3. You're stuck with it. I don't know how that would work for y'all.
Yes, please.
Honestly, I am impressed at the level that we're at currently. And Debbie, I don't know, maybe you can say what other counties are looking at, but countywide, we're almost at 65% enrollment. When we first signed up for this, I was told that, very, very few counties even hit 75. So we're doing really, really well. I absolutely appreciate that, and I would love more money for this program. But I don't see it going that much higher than the 8,400. But obviously, any funds that Athens City puts into this pot is going to offset the costs to other municipalities.
City Administration, any comments?
I have a couple. Rather than it being a 3-year, council, please consider anything. But possibly a 2-year, if we're seeing potentially a slower creep moving forward, to not lock into 3 years. I agree with Mr. Tepe, and I agree with the question that was raised. You don't want to do that. You don't want to lock yourself in to where all of a sudden you're having to amend and resubmit something in the future. The last thing I want to share, the social return on investment for a program like this, it is calculable. And in my opinion, it's pretty significant. To have this many books in the hands of infants on up to the age of 5 is an amazing program. I remember sitting in the governor's mansion several years ago learning about this the very first time, and I was hooked right away, thinking, if this is something that we can get here in Athens County, and in particular the children of Athens, but I think larger in the county, because we need to make sure that we're raising all individuals. And so, council, please consider, again, a 2-year commitment at the 8,400, leaving us some room to where, if that changes in the future, that we have the ability to increase it without having to go through with an amendment to an ordinance that exists, or a contract.
And I'll just, we don't, demographics are demographics, right? We know that the number of high school seniors is by 2025, so I'm sure the number of 5-year-olds also may change. It may go either direction. It's great for the program to continue to grow and to get 100% of the children in Athens County, but we don't know. So maybe your point about a 2-year cycle might be something to consider. Any comments from members of the public? Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all.
Director Tepe. Appreciate your contribution.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Finance and Personnel will move on to our appropriations on the agenda tonight. And the first one on our agenda is $2,500 for a granite bench in one of our cemeteries. I'm not sure which cemetery it is, but this was a damaged granite bench that needs restoring. Are there any questions from the committee on the cemetery granite bench?
I have a question.
Yes.
How can a granite bench be damaged? It's granite, right?
Yeah, I believe
Stone?
it was,
Vandalized?
no, I believe it was employee, a mower or something hit it. Oops. I believe.
Boy, quite a mower.
I'm not sure. Mayor Patterson? I don't have
It was
specifics. on this.
accidentally struck by a mower.
Oops.
Ouch. Okay.
But it needs to be restored. Yes, members of?
I guess one question, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm not having enough reverence for how the cemetery should look, but does it have to be a granite bench? If it's damaged and we're gonna replace it, does it have to be?
I believe that it does. I mean, this was privately purchased.
Oh,
Yeah.
never mind.
What do we use, glue?
Oops.
That will do it.
Okay, other comments, other members of the council, any comments, members of the public, anything additional from the administration? Okay, and the next appropriation item, I'm going to do both of these together. The environmental coordinator for the city of Athens is requesting safety supplies. However, the budget that he has is in his capital line in the transaction code 500s. So we would like, we're proposing to decrease that capital line by $500 and increase the 200, 300 transaction codes so that he can buy some safety supplies for his stormwater program. Questions from the committee about this increase, decrease for Mr. Adams? Other members of council? Members of the public? Anything to add from the city administration? Thank you. And finally, we have a request from the city, and the auditor's office has made this quite clear that this is necessary. A $200,000 transfer to the Arts, Parks, and Recreation income tax from 273, which is that income tax line, to the Rec Department 270 line. So this is an inter-fund transfer. The auditor's office has expressed that this is very important for the payroll of Arts, Parks, and Recreation, so it may require suspension. But this is an item that we've discussed over the past few years on council, and it's important that our staff are paid, but we also need to look closely at the Arts, Parks, and Recreation budget as we go into 2024 and try to solve some of these issues with needing these increases late in the year. Questions from the committee on this $200,000 transfer? Other members of council? Member Swank.
Can you get a little bit more specific why this is needed?
I don't have specific figures. Would the city administration like to?
Yeah, thank you, Member Crowell. So first of all, when we certified resources at the beginning of the year on the revenue side to say, what our starting point for unappropriated balance was, we included a $200,000 transfer from somewhere into the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Fund 270. Now, the implication is that somewhere probably was going to be the 273 fund, which is the additional levy money that we passed a few years ago to pay the debt service on the pool and to do capital improvements. But it also has been the source of funds that we've accessed as we've run up against the ceiling basically on what's available in 270 proper funds. So what has occurred is we're running a razor thin operation over there, and we did pull in $45,000 more in pool revenue this year compared to last year, but also we had quite a bit more expenses in the pool, specifically with large items breaking. If you remember last year in August, we ended up closing several days because we didn't have staff, because all the lifeguards went back to school, and we had to close. And this year we didn't have to do that. We made sure we hired enough lifeguards, and so there's been more expenses as well. And so this is I wish that we didn't have to do this. I really do. I'd rather. And Catherine Ann is probably the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Director, is probably the most shaken up and tore up about doing this, because she has designs on all of that 273 money. She has capital improvements around all the parks in the city that we want to achieve. But people cost money, and when things break in a very fancy advanced pool, they all cost money as well. And when boilers break and various things, there's expenses. So it's an expensive operation to run.
Other members of council?
So, if I heard you right, we entered the year knowing we were 200,000 short and would have to transfer some money in.
From somewhere.
from
Correct.
somewhere.
That was in our certification of resources at the beginning of
Okay.
the year.
And if I remember Crowell correctly, this is for wages.
I mean, it's for wages insofar as there's a cash flow issue, and that you gotta have enough cash that's been received into the fund to be able to make payroll at any given month. So, but, you know, those expenses are wages and utilities and
Okay.
repair costs and everything that have been burning. So you have a burn rate, you know, the amount of money
Right.
that you consume over time, and, you know, we basically got down close to the, you know, the cash flow, zero line.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Director Stone. That was a better explanation than I gave, Member Swank. I heard from the auditor's office, they were concerned about being able to pay those
Right.
wages. So not that the problem was the wages, but
Right.
that paying the payroll going forward.
Gotta pay.
Other comments from the administration on this item? Mayor?
Well, I think it's worth noting, you know, the other thing, while it was anticipated, I think that with the large increase in pool staff this year, which was wonderful in my opinion, because we were able to keep the pool open all the way through, not just through Labor Day weekend, but, you know, for our famous dog swim, which actually has lifeguards that are there, that are trained, I guess, in canine CPR if they had to. But also, in all seriousness, council passed an ordinance that showed an increase for seasonal part-time to where it was $13 an hour, $14 an hour, and then ultimately $15 an hour. So when you really expand your lifeguard staff to include 15, 16-year-olds, which, you know, when I took office, we weren't hiring 16-year-olds to work at the pool, and I felt that that was a real opportunity for people to understand how to manage their money as a youth. So that's something else we have to, certainly, we are cognizant of that, and we're going to have to be even more cognizant about that moving forward into 2024.
Thank you, Mayor. Any comments from the public? Thank you, President Isley. That ends Finance and Personnel.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Crowell. Well, now we move on to City and Safety Services, chaired by Councilmember McCary, and joined by Councilmembers Grace, Swank, and Crowell.
Thank you, President Maxson. We have a couple of items on our City and Safety Services agenda this evening. First, Athens City Code Title IX, General Regulations, Chapter 9.05, Fire Control Petroleum Liquids, amending Section 9.05.99 on penalties. City Council members have a document suggesting amendments on the drive, and I believe we still have our fire chief here who may wish to make some overall comments, if that would be permissible. Chief Reimer, would you mind giving us some of your thoughts?
Good evening again. This is not just for petroleum liquid stuff. This is more concerning the penalties that are currently on the city ordinances, which are quite outdated. One of the ones in particular that I noted on there were interference with a fire scene. And what that noted was it was a minor misdemeanor with up to a $150 fine, but we were, according to the law director, we were not allowed to seek restitution. So if somebody decided to drive over one of our fire hoses hooked to a hydrant, we would only get $150 out of that. And that hose costs about $800 per section. So it's a money loser. The second part of that has to do with paragraph B, if you read in here, allows with the section 90508, that has to deal with the following a lawful order of a public safety official. And where this comes in handy and where we're using it the most is when we're doing our occupancy inspections during the nightclubs or the bars uptown. We're running to an issue to where we go and we say, you need to keep this occupancy down. You're 100 people over when you shouldn't be. And then we can call in the police department, they give them a minor misdemeanor, $150 fine, and that's all we can do at this point. So $150 for a bar that's making thousands of dollars a night or whatever it is for overcrowding their bars is really not taking, it's not doing the job of getting the occupancy down. So what this does here is just gives us the ability to go from a minor misdemeanor to a fourth, third, and second degree, and making it more punitive as it goes with time in jail as well as a larger fine to it. And it will hopefully build us up a base that if that still does not take care of the issue, then we need to find some other legal recourse in order to get them to comply with the order. That's one of our biggest issues that we're dealing with now is we've been doing this for years. We keep going out. They I want to say laugh in our face. They just blow it off and try and find a way to skirt around the issue. And we're only going out a few times a year for these inspections on our busy weekends. But I can tell you right now, it's happening every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And it's only a matter of time before we have a Rhode Island nightclub fire to where many people are going to end up being trapped inside of these bars that are blocking their rear exits with trash, that are overcrowding it, letting everybody in. We went out this weekend and there was 4 of them that were over occupancy. The weekend before that, there was 2 of them. And we gave them a lawful order ahead of time saying, this is what it shall be. This is your warning. Here's what we're going to do from here on out. This is why we're trying to adjust this to give us a little bit more teeth in order to hopefully make them comply.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Mayor?
If I may add, and if council will allow me, a question for the fire chief, which I know the answer to, but I think it's worth mentioning. How many repeat head counts did you do within any establishment that may have exceeded their capacity? And did firefighters come back and see that had it changed? Did it go up?
No, they have, they usually hit every occupancy at least twice a night, sometimes more than that, especially if it's a contiguous bar or a bar that we're having issues with. The last one we went to, we had one this weekend where we went and they were 35 people over, told them to get their numbers down. We went down, hit the other bars. We come back to this one here. There were 39 people over and the number had gone up, not down.
Thank you.
I'm sure many of us wish to express our appreciation for how seriously you take these inspections and the recommendations for these fines for inappropriate behavior that contribute to these safety issues. Councilmember Swank?
Several questions for the chief. We were at a wedding reception not too long ago, and on the wall it had posted the occupancy. Is that posted in each of these establishments?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
We provided those ourselves. I got the official number from the building code office for the state, and this is what they issue the number and say this is how many you're allowed to have in this establishment. We got those numbers, we created a chart, we printed up a sign, myself and the code director signed them all. They're laminated with our city seals on it. It's above every door when we walk in. So when we walk in, we say, this is what the number is.
So on any given Friday or Saturday night, say at 11 o'clock, how many firefighters are on duty in the city of Athens?
It depends. Right now, we have a minimum staffing of 4.
So what we have is if 2 people go together, we have half of our fire force checking occupancies of bars.
No. We bring in overtime for those weekends that we go in. So they'll come in from 9 o'clock at night until the bars close to about 3 o'clock in the morning. I have 2 to 4 firefighters going bar to bar in the uptown area hitting all these establishments.
And I guess the last question is, do you feel that these proposed fees, fines, assessments, whatever you want to call them, are high enough?
I don't know if it's high enough. I think the issue is going to be, is it going to be enforced? What is going to happen when we say, here it is, that is turned over to the courts, and what is the court going to uphold? And what is it going to get the attention of the actual owners? One of the things that we had been doing in the past, last year, it was a minor misdemeanor charge for the manager. One establishment said, every one of my employees is a manager. So I give you a misdemeanor charge, and the next time I come back, he's the manager now. And the next time I come back, well, she's the manager now. So it wasn't really doing anything to it, and one bar owner or one manager said, I'll go ahead, and my boss said he'll pay it, pack them in here as tight as we can get them because we're making more money. $150 is nothing. His words. So I don't know what you really, you can make it $10,000. The only thing it's really going to, if you're going to hit the wallet is, or we have the ability to suspend their liquor license and say, you know what, you're closed for the month of October, homecoming and Halloween. Maybe in November you'll learn your lesson. I'm sorry, know I'm getting a little ired right now. The issue is our firefighters are getting tired of being laughed at and going out and trying to do these inspections, ensure the safety of the occupants and of all the patrons to all these establishments, and they're just throwing it in our face.
So what would it take to suspend those liquor licenses? I'm not familiar
That's
with
a
the law.
question for you and the state.
I'm sorry?
That's a question for you and the state.
I,
I cannot tell you what that process is. I can tell you the answer that I received from the state liquor board. And Debbie Walker has the copy of that email. It was, their words were, that's up to your city council.
So we could pass an ordinance to that effect.
You could. I would like to try this effort first to see if this takes care of the issue. And it's not just, this is not the only issue. There's other, if you read directly into the penalties phase of this, of other ordinance and things that'll take care of it. Again, seeking restitution if somebody runs over a fire hose. So this isn't the only portion of it, but it's to see what this will take care of. This is within a 2-year period. I had one bar in particular that's happened twice this year. Okay, well now you're at a 4th degree misdemeanor. It happens 2 more times within a 2-year period, you're up to a 2nd degree misdemeanor. What is going to be upheld and what's going to be done about it?
This isn't a matter of being punitive, it's exactly what the mayor said. We're one match, one more cigarette from a disaster.
We have provided education to these. We had a meeting this year, a Zoom meeting. A couple years ago, we brought the bar owners in and managers in, showed them the actual video from the nightclub fire in Rhode Island that killed 100 people. We've told them all the legalities and the issues and the lawsuits and the deaths and what can happen. And it's just not going to happen here in Athens. I hope it doesn't with 4 people on duty.
appreciate the line of inquiry and want to take a comment from the mayor before I check with other council members for questions.
I will certainly, find out what the protocol is through the Department of Commerce, Liquor Control, because the way I understand it is if council were to deem a business as a nuisance business, to this point of overcrowding repeatedly or other things could occur, to request that Liquor Control open a case on this, but it's not an easy process, just to share with council. I've sat in this room with an issue that came up via council with a liquor permit purchase, a business in town that wanted to purchase one. It's time consuming, and it's difficult, and at the end of the day, we were on the short end of the stick, and that, the Commerce and Liquor Control said, no, the liquor permit's gonna be issued. So I'll look into it to see what the actual action items or action steps are for council. But it's not as easy as council just putting forward a resolution or ordinance saying, business X, Y, and Z, you guys are closed. That's not gonna happen. It can't happen.
Chief Reimer, I'm hearing you emphasize the point of enforcement being really key here, that the fine increases and penalties are one matter, but are there other, and you mentioned this is a place for us to start, are there other measures that you hope might be considered in the future to address the enforcement part more, or the incentivized cooperation?
Well, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to be doing these inspections. People would mind their own business and make sure that they're keeping their occupancy down, they're keeping their exits open, they're taking care of the issue, so we wouldn't have to do that. Unfortunately, it's not a perfect world. I would love to have the ability to send the firefighters out every single weekend or every single night and make sure they're all closed. There are times when we are coming back from a fire run at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and they look over and see that bar is clearly packed. They stop the truck, they get out and count, they talk with the person at the door, and it's not one of our normal weekends that we have dubbed that we're going out, our busy weekends. Again, as I said, this happens all the time. We cannot afford to pay firefighters overtime every single Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to go out and to monitor these bars. We can't pay police officers to be checking for fake IDs at the door and sitting there at every single establishment, which would keep the numbers down, which would keep, make sure that they're counting as they're going in. We can't afford to do that. It's the cooperation of getting the business owners to understand this is a safety issue. It's not a monetary thing. This is what the state law says it is. This is what you need to comply with, and this is for the safety of your patrons.
Thank you, Chief. Questions or comments from other members of the committee? Councilmember Spionis?
Yes, I have to say, I talked to Chief Raymond about this earlier, and I absolutely support what he's trying to do. And it does, with the theme we had earlier, you need some progressive consequences. And if you don't hit them where it hurts, they're not going to do anything. It's just the cost of business. So I think we have a responsibility to make sure that we're consistent about that across the board in whatever kind of policies we're working on. So I support what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to Councilmember Swank's question, do I think this is enough money? That is, $750 is the most, not more than $750 in 90 days in jail for the owner of the establishment. $750, a lot of money for somebody making whatever they make at their bars. That I'm not certain of. Could it be more? I'm sure it could. I guess the underlying thing is what happens when a owner has this many charges on there? Are they able to renew their liquor license, or what does that do some other way? And what is the teeth that we're going to have, not only from us, but in the court system, that's going to hold this up and say, nope, here's what it is, and here's what your punishment's going to be, and not waive it?
Chief, what would you be looking for as far as a change once we were to hypothetically implement this increase in fine? What would you want to, you'd like to see the number of violations decrease, but is there any data you'd be looking for regarding repeat offenses to help us know if we're on track or if we needed to go with higher fines yet?
Again, this would just be a start, and we'd have to look at the repeat offenses, and this goes right back to all we can do is issue the summons. According to the law director's office, is we wait until the week after, or a Monday or Tuesday, and say, here's the ones that were in clear violation, here's your summons, here's what your charge is going to be, and then it goes through the court system. What happens after that is in the court's hands. So that's going to go right back to what are the actual punishments incurred or given to these owners, or anybody that's in offense of these. What are the actual punishments that they're actually getting, and is that lowering it? I can tell you it has increased. We've done it the last 2 weekends. It was 2 bars one weekend. It was 4 bars this past weekend. So is that just going to keep going up? Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Councilmember Spionis?
Yeah, just one other comment, and that is, it'd be interesting to see what other like communities are doing in this regard, because I'm sure we're not the only ones who face this kind of thing. So it might be helpful to see what, Finley or whatever are doing that have colleges and similar issues. So maybe they have some answers that can be helpful.
I'm sure council would be open to hearing any creative suggestions. Councilmember Crowell?
Thank you, Member McCary. I'm sure that you and the law director have thought about this. The language in here, any person who shall violate, is owner. Can you use the word owner to pinpoint the people who are ultimately responsible?
Well, the lawful order that we had sent out by certified mail this year was sent to the owners of the establishment. It was directed to the actual business owner, sent to that establishment. Most of them, I have to go back and check, I think only 4 of them had not been received at that time. They were not in the uptown area specifically. But to my understanding, that would be on to the owner according to the law director.
Okay, so person here then refers to the owner of the establishment.
Because this is an all-encompassing, changing this is not just, again, it's not just for bar violations. This is other offenses that may occur. Continual harassment or interference at a fire scene. So they're not exactly an owner. This is a person who is continually coming up and cutting fire hose, wherever the case may be, and other violations.
I see. Gotcha. Thank you.
One related question, if there is more than one owner, is it up to the court to determine who's jailed, for example?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we have one establishment uptown that I know of that is an owner, it's the Casa. And there's more than one owner there.
Yes.
So that is going to be up to the courts to decide. Not that I'm saying we're having any problems with the Casa. I'm just saying that is the only business I can think of right now that has everybody's the owner there.
Right. Thank you for that example. Administration, other comments before we check with audience and once more with council members? Councilmember Grace?
I just wanted to clarify that we are talking about penalties for a range of violations, as Chief Reimer stated, and also that for these changes, when we set a specific offense level, that's a 4th-degree misdemeanor, the state has maximum jail time and maximum fine associated with different offense levels. So we can't say, well, it's, a 1st-degree misdemeanor, but we're going to create this, $20,000 fine associated with it. There are state-determined maximums by offense level.
So it might be interesting for council to know how close to those maximums in each category we might be. Councilmember Ziff?
Thank you, Councilmember Carey. Thank you, Chief, just for being here and coming with all these fee increases. I'm a complete supporter of all of these, pretty much. Especially, I want to make sure that the one that's interfering with a fire scene is, because, God forbid, there's some terrible fire uptown, things get chaotic. Sure, maybe they run over a line going to the hydrant. What if we have firefighters inside on an interior attack? They run over their line. Now they're stuck in a building with no water on fire. Like, that could kill someone. It could easily kill any of our firefighters. So I want to emphasize that, because I think it's very easy for people at home to sort of hear these things like, oh, a fire hose, it gets run. You go inside a building that's on fire and don't have any water. It's terrifying, okay? Like, it's a really serious thing. And also, don't interfere with a fire scene. What are you doing? God. If you need a laugh, go on the internet and look up pictures of people who parked in front of hydrants, and sometimes the occasional engine company has to get water, and they have to run a hose through the car, which is hilarious looking, but you never want that to have to happen. So be cognizant of what you're doing. I guess this turned into a PSA by accident, but don't be an idiot. I mean, come on. It's not hard. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, council members, committee members, administration. Any questions from the audience? Wonderful. We'll move to City and Safety Services' second and final agenda item for the evening, and that is a perhaps less complicated memorandum of agreement for Ohio Organized Crime Investigations Commission Task Force. We've discussed a number of collaborations our law enforcement has entered over the years to strengthen and broaden our reach when it comes to the ability to gather information and collaborate against crimes. And in this particular task force collaboration, we are talking about such violations as murder, corrupt activity, money laundering, trafficking in drugs, human trafficking, kidnapping, assault, aggravated felonies, and this memorandum of understanding is being executed among several different partners here, looking to identify those specific municipalities. And while I peruse that, I'll invite our City and Safety Services Director to offer any additional comments on this particular memorandum of collaboration.
Sure. Thank you, Member Carey. The request that we have before you is the authority to enter into the Ohio Organized Crime Investigations Commission and a specific task force within that, 2209, and that's the one that's specific to Southeast Ohio. For a number of years, we've participated in what we all refer to as MCU, Major Crimes Unit, which is assigning one officer from the city of Athens to an organization that's a multi-jurisdiction organization that subsequently goes after large crimes. That's based out of Central Ohio, or Southeast Central Ohio specifically, and the former chief was particularly partial to that particular one. We can afford to spend one officer basically on one of these task forces, because we're basically funding that officer to go and do that as their full-time job, basically. And so, we have to be a little bit choosy about how many of these we join, because it's a commitment, luckily. And with new chief on board, looking at the whole situation holistically, he believes it makes more sense for us to take that one asset and instead apply it to this specific task force, which is more Southeast Ohio oriented. And so, I gave him basically that latitude to come back and recommend to me which task force that we participate in. He thinks we'll get a little bit more bang for our buck if we join the specific task force. And as you mentioned, there's a number of agencies in Athens, Morgan, Noble, Monroe, Meigs, and Washington County that are involved. The two documents you have they're identical, basically. One of them is the original memorandum that has the signatories, and then another one is an amendment to that original memorandum, but the language is all the same, it just has the new signatories at the bottom. And what you're doing is giving me the authority to allow us to enter into this task force. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Questions from committee members? Yes, Councilmember Swank.
Director Stone, are these districts already kind of pre-assigned? These are all 6 contiguous counties.
Sure. It's under an umbrella out of the Ohio. I want to say the Ohio Attorney General's office establishes the way that these various task force set up. However, it really is up to the individual participating entities to decide how it's going to be allocated. So, for instance, Athens, even though Athens County was part of this task force starting in April of 2022, Athens City did not participate, and now we're asking to participate.
Okay.
So really, it kind of is a function of the senior public safety official in each one of those jurisdictions to decide whether or not they're going to participate. It just so happens that these are contiguous, which makes a lot of sense given just proximity for various crimes that occur.
Okay.
Other committee members? Other members of council? Additional comments from administration? Questions about this from the audience? Okay, that concludes City and Safety Services.
Thank you, Councilmember McCary. We'll now move on to Planning and Development. This is chaired by Councilmember Grace and joined by Councilmembers Crowell, McCary, and Spielness. And we will note that the one item that is listed on here, and the council members did receive the Planning Commission recommendation and details of that development. And as we understand, what has happened is that this development will not be occurring. So, but we did have it on the agenda, and as I understand, there's also somebody here from the public who would want to make a comment during our brief discussion. So I don't think it's going to have a whole lot of discussion tonight, given the fact that it's not going to happen.
Yes, so we do just have one item on the agenda, and that is the discussion around approval of the Homestead Court and Broadmoor Planned Unit Development, or PUD. And this is a development that has been in the works for a few years and has been discussed by this body and previous incarnations of this body a few different times. But the basics are that it was to be a housing development located at University Estates, and that there were specific incentives being agreed to by the city in the form of a TIF, the tax increment financing. Then the developer was agreeing to follow certain restrictions placed on the housing planned, and it was intended to be some higher density in terms of townhomes and higher levels of accessibility for use, and with specific price restrictions. Now, the part of the process involves the Athens City Planning Commission hearing and recommending to City Council that we approve the planned unit development as submitted by the developer. And the oddity in this particular case is that we have been asked to approve this despite being told by the developer that at this time, they do not believe the development will proceed, and that the cost for building what they had intended to build have increased so much that even with the offset of the TIF, it is not a financially feasible plan for the developer. This is something that I personally was involved in several different stages of, and also our city planner, Paul Logue, was very much involved in working out some of the details of this, and it is a project that I very much would have liked to have seen come to a state of being occupied dwellings in our city. And I believe from reading through the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting that our mayor voiced similar feelings of being hopeful that through some means this could still proceed in some form. And so the Planning Commission went ahead with a vote to recommend to City Council. And so even with the knowledge that it very well may not be built in, we could go ahead and approve the plan, the PUD, and in the hopes that something could still come of it. Obviously, if there are significant changes, we would have to hear about that. It would have to be amended. But since there have been so many steps completed thus far, this is a pretty insignificant in terms of lift of work to do it. So it seems reasonable to go ahead and approve this, just to sort of wrap up this process and hope that maybe something could still happen, but with the knowledge that based on the comments of the developer, they are not believing that it will proceed as we had hoped. Does that give a good enough summary? Members of the committee, yes, Member Spielness.
It was my understanding that the developer met with you all recently or intended to, and my assumption there is that they would like a change in the TIF or in some other kind of procedure, hoping that that would make it more viable.
I certainly was not involved in a meeting, Mr. Mayor.
That is not correct. The meeting was for the developer to tell us the situation that they were experiencing now with development interest rates, with material costs, and also the reevaluated cost or the engineer's estimate for the cul-de-sac unto itself, so the infrastructure to which the TIF would be used to repay that development within that neighborhood. And any way it was looked at from the developer standpoint with a change, and to kind of reinforce what Councilmember Grace was saying, this is a project that's been in the plan since 2018. And so the estimated cost of the infrastructure in 2018 is significantly different from what it is now, and the TIF would not even cover the interest to be paid on a project like for the infrastructure portion of this project. So not even the TIF worked out. There was never a conversation as to maybe we change the TIF and the way we can do it, because you can't. The 7510 is pretty clear in terms of how that TIF can be used. 75% revenue capture or property tax capture over a 10-year period of time. Mm-hmm. Just wasn't going to work.
Member Crowell, and then we'll go back to Member Spielness.
Thank you.
I'm curious, this project spans my time on council. And it was an exciting project, and I thought something that the city needed, and I'm disappointed that this has not worked out. Reading the minutes, I see that the engineering estimate, I believe they remarked, or in the Planning Commission remarked that it had doubled, which seems kind of,
It almost tripled.
So just quickly, is the lack of the, financial feasibility of this project tied to some of the restrictions that they had for the development? Because it's really important that we find this for the city of Athens, and how can we move forward? Sorry, if you have any answers there.
Sure. The answer is extremely complicated, Member Crowell. So it's both tied to restrictions that were established because that added, there's a cap on what they could charge for the individual units. Then to build them a certain way, achieve certain goals, and so those are costs. And it's also tied to the market and to the cycles, right? So right now the construction industry is saturated with a tremendous amount of federal money associated with ARPA funds and expenditures and other expenditures. Intel in and of itself is just consuming skilled labor in the state of Ohio. It's wonderful for the state of Ohio. It's wonderful for the United States of America that we're onshoring production of semiconductors again. But for the time being, it's very hard to build things in the state of Ohio. I'm very happy that we're getting this fire station built, honestly. So there's that situation, just a tremendous demand for materials and labor at this time in the cycle. Beyond that, interest rates are going up as a way to, cool the economy. And so those two things, both an increase in labor costs, increase in material costs, causing that construction cost estimate go up, that also is being driven by some of the requirements we put on, not a lot. Like for instance, we're letting them build the water line out of C900 pipe. I would prefer that it's ductile iron pipe. But we've had other C900 at University Estates, and so I think that's okay. But that's a concession in quality of material, in my opinion, that we gave to try to get this across the finish line. And it is too hard to do. And so I think something has changed significantly both in the market. When I started here at the City of Athens, the position of the administration, the position of the council was, we're not doing anything to help any developers do anything because all they're going to do is come in here and make a bunch of money on us. And at that time, you could still build homes where local people can build equity in it and make a profit. Now it just doesn't happen. Nobody approaches us and says, we want to build either single-family detached homes, single-family attached homes, or condominiums in the city of Athens, and can make a profit. There still is demand to build, apartment complexes for students with downtown developers that own that. But right now, this type of housing, it's just not feasible, and nobody's approaching us. And so, in this particular situation, I don't know what we do to try to promote this type of housing to get built in the city, because we really need it. So.
Member Spielness.
Yeah, I can't help but ask, with the Ridges project, there's a lot of housing that they're talking about, and this doesn't bode well for that either, based on what you just said. Because, I know many people who are interested in this kind of housing and would love to have this built and are looking forward to all that, including me, by the way. So I just hope that if there's anything we can do to encourage this kind of housing and make it more feasible, I'd be supportive of that.
I think that we don't want to get too far off topic in a committee meeting at this time, but given that by granting a TIF to encourage something, I feel that was sort of like the most that the city as an entity could offer to a developer, and just to help offset the cost of the infrastructure. But we can't, as a municipality, possibly address the increase in cost for construction, as well as the massive increase in interest rates. What we can do is we could approve this and hope that maybe within, and it's good for 2 years, correct? If we approve PUD?
I think so.
Yeah, so we could hope that there will be a change in sort of global economic forces that allows the developer to reconsider this and even possibly bring some changes back to council to reconsider. But I also think that some of the motivations for this particular development were to have a price cap and to have an owner occupancy requirement and to have accessibility standards. And so I think we wouldn't want to say, yeah, we'll grant you a TIF to build whatever type of housing you want to build and sell for whatever price the market will bear, because that's not within what our interest would be. And so I think for now, we just have to accept the situation that is, there are way too many forces that we have no control over that have come to play. And but I would ask that when this comes before council, that we go ahead and approve at the recommendation of the Planning Commission, and hope that so much of the groundwork has been done, that then something good could still come of it, even if not exactly as was hoped. Member Reisner?
Yeah. I'm really hesitant about voting for something that's not going to happen. Frankly, I don't see it happening in 2 years. And what I'm worried about is if we approve this, turn it to an ordinance, I assume, okay? What the city then is bound to do. What are we then committed? It seems kind of open-ended, and you're getting into unknown territory. You don't know what's going to happen, and we're committing ourselves to something that we don't know what's going to happen. I would much prefer that, okay, this didn't work out, okay, fine. We did our best, we tried, like you said, from 2018 to now, but it just didn't work out. Well, in that case, start over again.
Except we're not committing ourselves to an uncertainty. We're agreeing to the exact terms that have been through many steps.
Which don't matter anymore. Those conditions don't exist. Okay, we're committing ourselves to something that isn't there anymore.
President Isley?
I think what we can also do between now, rather than getting into a lengthy discussion on that part of it, we can ask for clarification from the law director on what she thinks is advisable given the information on this. And I'm not aware that there's been consultation with her. And just a minor point of clarification on the new community authority and your concerns about whether or not that was going to go through. The new community authority gives that organizational structure, gives that group more flexibility, and also entitles them, or not entitles them, but makes them eligible for other kinds of tax incentives and lower rates that will perhaps give them an edge. A new community authority, that's the value of that, and the Community Improvement Corporation.
Member Swank.
The Planning Commission has approved the PUD. I hear the words uncertainty, lack of clarity, again and again and again in everybody's comments. Is there a statute of limitations on what you passed? In other words, if this body were to do nothing in a year, 2, 3, 4, whatever, there comes some clarity to this process. Could we then pass the ordinance supporting what you did? Because I'm in agreement with Member Reisner. I'm not real comfortable voting for ambiguity. So in other words, if we do nothing, how long does your action last?
We believe it's 2 years in which it stands, but again, what came from the Planning Commission is now in front of council. So it's ultimately council's decision as to whether to bring this forward, to vote on it, yay or nay, or
wait and see,
or not.
There's more than just not. We could take the wait and see attitude too.
Member Crow.
Thank you, Member Grace. I'm a little confused. I mean, if this was going to happen, I think we were all in support. We've been talking about this for 6 years, that it would pass. And the only possibility here is that it doesn't get done at all. I mean, I don't know what the concern is
Well,
from some members of council about what is going to happen. You can't change, somebody can't come in and say, oh yeah, we are going to do it, but we're going to change everything. No, the agreement that with the planning commission, the agreement that all the plans are done, we've looked at all the plans there, everything is plotted out, it has to be done that way. It can't, so it either happens or it doesn't. I'm not concerned with moving forward and approving this. And
That
voting
is
on it.
my position as well. There is a very clear process. There are very specific plans as to what could be done if we approve this PUD. And I don't think there's any risk of, like, they can't say, oh, well, council approved this, and now we're going to, as member council, like, they can't change what has already been approved. And we are just completing the process with what would be the city's part in allowing this to go forward. We have done our part. We have done the things that we could do to make it happen. And then after that, it is up to the developer and their financing, whether or not they can make what was agreed upon happen. There's no downside to me to approving the plan that has been talked about since 2018. We're saying, yep, all that work that has gone into it, we would still like to see it happen just as it was decided upon. And that's all that this would be doing. It doesn't authorize anything else to happen. Member Swank.
There are three legitimate concerns here. First is price. It's 2023, almost 2024. If the first house is built in 2025, the minimum price is now $275,000. This thing doesn't get built to 2030, the minimum price is $319,000. But there's two other pieces of information missing. We've yet to receive a letter of support from the Athens Affordable Housing Commission. And we've yet to receive the same letter from the Disabilities Commission. That's in the ordinance. So there is some uncertainty, and there are some incomplete parts. And this is not affordable housing.
Well, under some definitions of affordable housing, it depends on how you define affordable housing. But this gives 2 years for the plans that have been approved by this body to move forward. And it's not giving them an open license to do something else within the next, the time frame. Are there other comments from administration? Any comments or questions from? Okay. Thank you for being here. That concludes planning and development.
Okay, thank you. We stand adjourned at 9:01 p.m. Thank you.